the same energy you use to have sex, the creative energy, is the same one that you could channel to create, the gifts that God's given you. I would just say, especially us black men, don't limit yourself. Like some of my mentors in different aspects have been elderly white women. Sometimes it's Mexican homies I met at school or Asian teachers. It's like sometimes we think we can only rock with our own, and then we end up being limited. There's something that we can learn from other people. Therapy has been huge for me because sometimes we don't know where the root work starts. And so having someone to listen to you and reflect back, someone who's trained as well, because it's one thing to have your friends listen to you, someone who's been trained to like reflect back some of the things that you're going through and help you work through your emotions is huge.
Greetings all and welcome to Living Once Twice. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Before we dive into today's show, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Living Once Twice. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, and share and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube, especially as it relates to our guests like the one that I'm finna bring on today. I'm very excited to bring on today's guest, Naeem Hopkins. Naeem is a community leader, man of God, artist, and mental health and wellness advocate, passionate about supporting BIPOC youth and adult men within the areas of spirituality, mental health, community healing, and brotherhood. Naeem is also a student at San Francisco State, where he's studying studio arts. Naeem, welcome to the show. How are you doing, King?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
For sure. This one was a long time coming. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to have you on here to really honestly get to highlight some of the conversations that you and I and others just have routinely. But
Yeah.
before we get into your story, I want to give folks a little bit of background, as I met you in one of my favorite places, the Iron Zoo, aka the gym, as you're a faithful member of the 5 a.m. workout club. And it's cool how gym friendships start. It starts off with like the head nod, then the affirmations are like, yo, I see you putting in work. Then we exchange names, and then I got to learn about you, the work you're doing in the church, the work you're doing with the men's group, and it's just been brotherhood from there. So I just appreciate you being on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. What was the first one that you said you wanted me to answer?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about a lot of different topics today. We're going to talk about everything from unpacking masculinity. We're also going to want to talk about some of the coping mechanisms that men use. But where I want to start, Naeem, is your journey. So what I would like to hear you more share, for those not familiar with your background, familiar with your story, can you talk more about your journey? And then also specifically, what's the role that faith has played in helping you become who you are today?
Yeah. So I grew up in North Berkeley, and split household, mom and dad. My dad stayed in East Oakland. My mom lived in North Berkeley with my grandmother. And so I went through Berkeley schools, K through 12, graduated from Berkeley High, but have been rooted in Berkeley for a long time. And I was just talking with my brother today about how crazy this journey has been, because he took the walk of faith with God before I did. I was, focused on sports, scholarships, and girls. I was like, that's where my mind was at. And he began to walk with God in his faith. And he's my older brother, so I've always looked up and admired him. And he would, drop these nuggets of wisdom on me, like, man, telling me truth that the Bible has, and encouraging me to live a certain way, live righteously, and to view myself and other people in a certain light. And at first, he was telling me this my freshman year of college. I wasn't really trying to hear it. I had this idea of what college was going to be for me: lots of parties, lots of fun, lots of crazy stuff. And so when he was first placing that in my mind, I wasn't hearing it. But it's kind of like the scripture says about like one plants a seed, one waters it, and God to bring the increase. So when the pandemic hit, that's really when I dove deeper into my faith, and I haven't really looked back since. It's been a huge part of my life: prayer, reading, um, fasting, um, really just being led in the spirit of like what I need to do and who I need to talk to and who I need to encourage. So even the fact that you and I connected, I can't really take credit for that. I think that was divinely purposed. And that's how a lot of my relationships have been beforehand, before my walk with God, and then especially afterwards. I think before I just wasn't able to recognize it, but now that I'm walking with him, it's like I realize how much favor and how many doors have been opened through prayer and just God looking out for me. So yeah, that's a bit of my journey so far.
Man, I love you kind of taking us on that and sharing so much there, Naeem, especially as you talk about this kind of before and after of who you were. You said sports, scholarship, and women. That was the focus, and to now how you're evolving. And we're gonna revisit some of that in a second.
Okay.
Because a lot of that factors into this whole concept of masculinity, this mask of masculinity, and how so many of us men are almost kind of let off course because we dabble in or we chase the passions and the pleasures of kind of the outside world and exterior validation and things of that nature.
Right.
But a part of our mask of masculinity is also emotional suppression, because we know many of us are struggling in pain, suffering in silence, and we're not taught. We're taught and said, like, big boys don't cry, but we're not really taught how to process and channel our emotions as we're going through a lot of parts of our journey. And you talked about how you've been able to lean in on faith and community. But another thing I've heard you share is the importance of, for us men, as we go on this journey of emotional maturity, crying, like how it can be good for us to let out a good cry. So I'd like to hear you just kind of take us through that, and like why it could be healthy for men to cry, to show emotion.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's God's way of allowing us to release, it's a release. A lot of times we've been taught only one way of releasing that's acceptable, which is anger. But at the root of all anger is sadness. And so it's like us being able to admit I'm sad. And I understand, like, years of us being taught, don't cry, don't cry. It can make it hard for me to then cry in front of you. And I don't necessarily have to cry in front of you, but as long as I make the time to cry, I come back feeling lighter. I come back feeling better. They say we used to have the best sleep after we got whooped. Because we be crying and we let that release out. We go and we take a fire nap and we hop back up and we feel better. But it's like, jokes aside, like we need to be able to let that out. It's a part of the human experience. It'd be like if they taught us that men shouldn't, I don't know, men shouldn't get tired. Like it's in our bodies to release in this way. It's healing to our bodies. It's healing to our souls. And a lot of times when we hold that in, it damages us and it damages the ones we care about because we're not able to let it out. So we flash on people. We're very irritable. We hurt people because we're hurt. And so it's extremely important for us to learn how to let that guard down and let those emotions out, because you're only human, you know?
Yeah, I want to just double down on what you shared about the importance of us to let that emotion out, because for so many of us, we bottle it up inside, or we try to handle our inner world on our own. And you talked about how if we don't, it can lead to anger, it can lead to outbursts. And with respect to some of the manifestations of what can happen if we don't emotionally regulate ourselves in a healthy way, we do know for some of us men, we could adopt some really unhealthy coping mechanisms or even addictions, whether it be drugs, alcohol, gambling, but even maybe some of the more taboo ones, such as sex, such as pornography. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on why, when it comes specifically to things like pornography. As I was chatting with another guest, the statistics around men's use of pornography being, at such a high rate in that struggle. I'd love to hear any thoughts you would share on, like, why do you think many of us men struggle with, say, sex or porn addiction?
Yeah, man. I think we as men, we struggle with rejection and we don't face it. And the porn will never reject you. So you can run back to the porn. I think at the same breath, we've also been taught to fantasize about women. Like, okay, I want this type of woman. I want her with these type of eyes. I want her with this type of body. And the porn will provide that for you as well. So it's like you can place yourself in a fantasy that maybe you've always desired but weren't able to attain. And it's comforting. And for a lot of us, it's like it's a habit that we've built for years. And so it takes time to work out. It's also a release. There's a certain, it's a release. To say that it's a release. And so it's like, when we're taught we can't cry, when we're taught to over sexualize women, and when we're taught that your manhood is defined in how many women that you lay with, porn is just like it is what it is type of thing. It's like, shoot, go ahead, do your thing. But in reality, it's like when we talk with men, we all know like the effects that it has on us. It's a lot deeper than just watching the video. It messes with yourself, your view of yourself, your view of other people, and the way you show up in relationships. So I think it's so high because, you know, part of loving someone is the risk of being hurt. And when we're not taught to be vulnerable and we're taught to be the ones who play other people instead of getting played, it makes it a lot harder for us to say, I'm going to go into this relationship vulnerable. It's easier to lust than it is to love. And so a lot of times we'd rather project the lust on someone than to be like, hey, this is my heart and I love you. Can I trust you with this? Because other people have heard it. A lot of times we were quick to take our heart back, turn cold, and then we continue the cycle of hurting people, which isn't right, but it's where a lot of us are at.
Now, I want to stay here and go deep. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and I love what you said there about it's easier to lust than to love, and
Yeah.
that porn is going to be there. It's not going to turn us down. It's available 24/7. Not only scientifically, we know that dopamine hit, that quick release or satisfaction that we can get, it's a lot easier versus engaging in like a relationship or a difficult conversation with someone. And one of the reasons I want to talk about this topic in particular is because, and you talked about this a little earlier, is that it's like kind of what we're taught or how we're programmed. And for many of us, when you look back at our root of, I'll speak for myself, when I look back at how I came into sex and intimacy, it was in the not the most healthiest form. Things that happened when I was before the age of 10, or being exposed to porn before the age of 10, like all of these things at the foundation, I developed a very dysfunctional understanding of sex, of intimacy. And I never course corrected until now in my mid 30s, where it's like, oh, wait, this isn't healthy, or the way that I'm going about this, my perceptions, like you were talking about, many of our perceptions or expectations are built around this unhealthy foundation that we've kind of adopted or just viewed from the outside world, instead of really being able to challenge that or have people around us. And another piece of this whole, like you and I chatting about how to kind of redefine this, the shame around these type of things, like addiction, like porn, like sex, is that we know a lot of men do carry shame about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess what would you offer to a man out there who's like, man, when they're hearing this and they're listening to it, like, man, I deal with that same struggle of objectifying women, or dealing with or struggling with sex addiction or porn addiction, but they carry a lot of shame, and then they're to the point where they don't want to go out and seek out the help or even admit that they need help in that. Like, what would you offer to them if they're struggling with that shame part of it?
Yeah, figure out the root, because there's always a root, and a lot of times it had nothing to do with you. Like what you're saying of like, say for you, and it was the same with me. I got exposed to porn really young. It's like you had no idea what that was until someone showed it to you. But a lot of times there's a root for all of the addictions that we come to. So like for people who struggle with alcoholism, maybe that was something in their family. Maybe they saw their dad do the same thing. Maybe that's one of the ways in which they numb the pain of something they've been through. And similar with us, it's like if say it's drugs, or whether it's alcohol, or whether it's porn, whether it's sex, it's like there's a root. And remember how you feel after using it, because it's never as satisfying as you want it to be. So there's something there, there's a hole there, and there's something that you need fixing for, and there's something that you need to accept grace for. Like a lot of times the shame will lead you right back to the same things. And that's why I say, man, like it's so beautiful. The faith we walk in is around grace and like accepting that. And so as someone who's battled with it, as someone who still battles, it's an everyday thing. Whatever you struggle with is an everyday thing. But when you figure out the root of it, you begin to remove the weed, because it's like a weed. You pull the top off, you cut the top off. It's the roots are still grounded. It's gonna grow right back. But once you find that root, you can get down to it, dig it up, and that might require some help. There's freedom and vulnerability too. So if you don't want to open up, I understand that, but at the same time, I also understand that when you're able to release, you're able to see that one, you're not alone, and two, that there are people who struggle with the same things, who beat it. They can give you advice, they can give you perspective, encouragement, and it's good to share. And it's good to share what you're going through. Similar to us crying, we've been taught a lot of times to just bottle what we're going through up, and that's detrimental to our health as well. So I would tell you to figure out that root work, do that root work like ET told us, and then share it with one of your brothers or one of your sisters who struggles with it as well, and be vulnerable. Let them see you, because once they see you, they can really help you, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, there's so many points that you made clear there, Naeem, that I wanna revisit. First, you talking about the importance of community, or reaching out and getting help when it comes to dealing with this. Also, you helping folks to understand, like, you shouldn't carry any shame, because so much of this are imprints that happen way before you became conscious of them, especially things that happen in your younger years. And I think for so many folks, we don't spend that time to get back to like the inner child work or our childhood, to really unpack the things that happened to us and then think about the connection that they have to us as adults now. And you start to mention something that I want to touch on, which is root work. Like, you're like, what, we could do what's on the surface, but we really got to do a deeper dive. And root work is something that you put me onto from one of our favorite, Eric Thomas, the preacher, E.T.
Yes, sir.
And in a second, we'll have you talk about it. But what it really kind of resonates with me is, like, now that we're all older, and as you start to become conscious, and like you said, go on this walk, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity where in this book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, they talk about we have to become responsible for the things that we weren't responsible for. And I feel like root work kind of really relates to that. So I'm going to share a quote that I learned from you from that ET video you put me onto, which is, you can change your environments, but until you change yourself, nothing else will ever change. And I find this such an impactful quote here. So Naeem, can you speak more about that quote and what not only root work has meant to your journey, but also, I know for you, like, therapy, like, how has that also helped you to do root work, as you were just mentioning a little bit earlier on, that it's important to get help on this in this process?
Yeah. Man, therapy has been huge for me. Because sometimes we don't know where the root work starts. And so having someone to listen to you and reflect back, someone who's trained as well, because it's one thing to have your friends listen to you, someone who's been trained to like reflect back some of the things that you're going through and help you work through your emotions is huge. So that's been huge for me. If there are any therapists out there, one dope thing that my therapist did, he's a Black man of faith. And when he first met with me, I didn't really have enough money to pay what he would pay for regular sessions. And so he worked with me. He said, like, what can you afford? And so we worked from there. And even times when I couldn't afford it, he would let me have free sessions. And now he lets me have free sessions. So it's like, I just recommend any therapist out there, if you have the capacity, allow one of those clients in. Want someone who looks like you, someone who could really use your help, because it changed my life for the better. But yeah, I would say Eric Thomas, man, he's been inspirational for all of us. I feel like been a big brother in the sense of like giving us game and wisdom, and also recognizing, like, he struggles with the same things that we struggle with, and it might look different, but there are certain struggles that he has that we struggle with as well. And I wanted to read you a quote out of this one book that I had as well. But if you would like,
Oh yeah, bro, go for it. I want to hear this.
yeah, man, and this was actually for one of the forums for men's group. So we hand these out at men's group. But it's this book called The Road Less Traveled. And it says, to be free people, we must assume total responsibility for ourselves. But in doing so, must possess the capacity to reject responsibility that is not truly ours. To be organized and efficient, to live wisely, we must delay gratification and keep an eye on the future. Yet to live joyously, we must also possess the capacity, when it is not destructive, to live in the present and act spontaneously. In other words, discipline itself must be disciplined. And that's something that's given me some perspective, because I really feel like, it is about balance. Like I should not have shame for some of the things that I do, but I should also take responsibility for me doing it. And so like if I can get to the root, okay, this is the root. And now that I understand the root, when I feel these emotions, I should be aware of what it might lead me to do. And if it leads me in a direction that I don't want to go in, I have to take responsibility. I have to repent and acknowledge my wrongs. Because it will be the same in relationship, like one thing that I would say that ET has taught me is that, and other married couples have taught me, is that, it doesn't end once you get married or you're in a relationship. Like if we don't work through these things now as men, as leaders in our families, as husbands and future fathers, hopefully, it's like that then comes down to our kids. It comes down to our wives, the way we treat them, the way we interact with them. And if I never get to the root work, my unhealthy habits will carry into my relationships and some of the most important relationships and negatively affect them. So that's what I would say about that. It's extremely important.
I love that quote that you just shared, and you talking about the accountability aspect of it. Because I think that is such that's a turning point for many men, is learning how to take accountability. And what you were hitting on too was kind of this whole aspect of like, once we're ready to be responsible and take accountability, there's steps that we need to take so that we make sure we don't repeat the kind of previous actions, behaviors, things that kind of led us astray, because that distraction is always going to be there. So I guess I want to talk now about, okay, how do you yourself eliminate distractions? Because as you go through this journey of trying to kind of course correct, whether it's the devil, whether it's temptation, all of that is still going to be there and be around. And so I'm wondering, like, for you, what have you found to be maybe some powerful tools to help you stay the course and to stay rooted in who you are and to not regress when it comes to the progress that you've made?
Yeah, man. I want to start off with saying I'm still figuring it out. I'm still working. So I don't want to come from a perspective I have it all figured out. But I will say one thing that's really helped me is not to gaze too long, because a long gaze a lot of times for me is led my mind into different areas, especially when it pertains to women, and changing the way that I view what success is. Like I'll share this with you. I went out the other night and I hung out with this young lady, and when it was all done, I felt like I had failed, and I was like, why do I feel like I failed? Because my old standard of success was that a successful date meant that we slept together. But that's no longer my standard. And so sometimes you have to, after you take that time to refine yourself, you have to allow yourself to be put back in the fire so that you can see what is still there in you that you need to work on, and not to feel bad about that. Because sometimes it's like we work on ourselves, and then something pops up and you start to feel like embarrassed or ashamed that it's still there. And in reality, it's just data, it's just feedback. Okay, this is still here. This is still a kink in my armor. All right, let me work on that. Let me fix that. Let me make sure that this is all right. And so I would say, man, allow yourself to see yourself, and don't beat up on yourself when you figure out what you still need to work on. Write those things down. Journaling helps me. Prayer. And like, man, people think that prayer has to be like, holy God, I'm going through it. Like, no, like, God, look, I want to have sex right now. She's an attractive young lady. This is what I'm going through. They say God already knows your heart. So be honest. Like, look, this is what I want to go through. I know that your word is telling me to walk this way, but I'm feeling tempted to go that way. I need your help. And promise you, man, like I've had my struggles where, maybe I was feeling tempted to watch porn. I might have even had it up on my phone. I'm being very vulnerable today. I might have even had it up on my phone, man. Only because of you, Justin. I only do this for you, man. I wouldn't tell the truth to everybody. I mean, I would tell the truth, but I wouldn't get this vulnerable. So I might have even had it up on my phone, man. And I'm like, God, I don't want to do this. And one of my brothers calls me like, yo, you was just on my heart. What you going through? And I'm like, bro, literally, man, I just had the pouring up, bro. Thanks for calling. And you're like, man, that's crazy because I was feeling tempted with this too. And so it's like crying out to God works. Um, Also avoiding distractions. Like some of my guys, man, yeah, you struggle with porn, but you also follow 30 Instagram models on the gram. Come on, man, that's not gonna help you. It's not gonna help you, man. You can't do that. You cannot do that. You gotta unfollow them, bro. You gotta unfollow them. And I would tell my
That's
guys
real.
that too,
That's
man.
real.
Especially when it comes to sex. I mean, it could be the same thing when it comes to alcohol. Like if you're struggling with alcohol, don't go to the bar, you know. And if you're struggling with sex, it's like listen to your heart. Listen to when you're dealing with a woman. If you're not trying to go in that direction anymore, listen to what your heart's telling you. Like, is she actually a good fit for me, or am I just lusting after her? Because when it's all said and done, if I'm spending all this time with her and my heart is just lustful and I really don't think that we have any interest, then after you get what you've been lusting after, you're going to leave her and she's going to feel hurt. She's going to feel confused and it's going to be damaging. And so just like realize what you actually want. And I would say also, too, like unfollow people who you've had like situationships with, because I feel like the temptation is always there when you guys are kind of in close proximity of like, I know we could do this. We did this a couple times. I know it's still available. So I would say just try and distance yourself from that, so that you can stay focused. Because God got something great for you, man. Better than what you can expect. And we're not gonna get that unless we stay locked in, you know. So yeah, I know I
No,
went to the rant.
no, you ain't going on a rant. You were speaking from the heart, and I appreciate your vulnerability and your openness because that's kind of what has helped me. Because
Yeah,
when we're in these groups and men are sharing like what their struggles are and what they're going through, it's like, wow, I'm not alone. Or something
right.
I used to like have shame about because I'll be the first one to raise my hand to like, oh, I had a dysfunctional relationship with sex.
Yeah,
Porn definitely a coping mechanism and carry a lot of shame of all these different things. But it's like when you find out you're not alone,
mm,
and that you can heal it
right.
and things of that nature. And there's like there's so much to what you were starting to say at the end. There's so much opportunity and light on the other side. It's like
Yeah,
that's the frequency, and you've brought this up. That's the frequency not only are we trying to get to, but we're trying to help the rest of our men, brothers out there get to as well. And so the only way we get there though is to take these topics that we sweep under the rug or we keep in the closet and just put our cards all out on the table because you said this too. We're all mortal men. None of us are perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have detours in the journey. But when you know to the left and the right of you, your brother is battling probably the same struggle and you're not alone, it's like, all right, we got this.
right,
So
right.
I appreciate that. Speak on it. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, man, and it makes it easier when you're struggling to then call your brother too. Because it's not like you struggle with this and your brother is like, I've never struggled with that. It's like, oh no, I know exactly what that's like. Let's talk about it, bro. What triggered you? Or like where are you at? Are you going through something? How your emotions feeling? And like just having that. One of the things that we're starting to do with the men's group is pair brothers up. So like, all right, you struggle with this and he struggled with that. We're gonna pair y'all up. So when he's struggling, give him a call. And that's what we're doing. So it's like you have that brother kind of like accountability, but more so, more than accountability, it's really grace and love because we've all fallen short. So when I fall short or my brother falls short, I don't need to hear, you fell short again. Cause I know that. I feel that guilt, that shame that we talk about, you feel that. What we need is like, it's all good, bro. Just get back up. I'm here with you. What you want to talk about? What happened? What triggered you? How you been feeling emotionally? You all right? Like you want to go get something to eat? Let's go sit down and chop it up. Like that's what we need in the brotherhood more so. I think that's another aspect of masculinity we've been shown is like to drill sergeant each other, which is not the most effective. I think a lot of times that pushes us back into our it makes it hard for you to open up again. Because when you did open up, somebody was like, exposing all of your vulnerabilities and wasn't graceful with you. So I think what our brotherhoods need more is just that love. Because once I know you love me, you could cuss me out, but I know that's my brother. He loves me, so it's coming from the best interest. But if I don't know that yet, I'm gonna be like, I'm never opening up to him again. I'm never opening up to Justin again. But if you're there for me and I fall short, and I'm there for you and you fall short, then when we see each other messing up and you like, Naeem, you need to get back on it. I'm like, all right, you're right, because you know me and you've been there for me, and we know each other, and we see each other, and we've been vulnerable with each other, and so yeah, it's valuable, man, very valuable.
Yeah, no, I love what you're talking about here in terms of how we as men can do a better job and a healthier job and a more loving job of checking each other. Because you could tell me if this was the same for you. Like growing up, that wasn't a part of the process or the circles that I was in. It was about what does your male resume look like? Who have you been with? What have you been up to? What are you doing out here? Versus saying like, nah, the way that you're treating your partner isn't right. Or like you were just saying a little bit, like, yo, you shouldn't be following all these Instagram models, bro. Like, especially if you're trying to focus yourself or put your energy in different places. So was it like that for you? Did you find yourself having to change your circles because of maybe that accountability was lacking in before, and you're like, you know what, I'm trying to get on a new frequency. Maybe I need to change the circles that I'm in. Or did you notice did the circles change organically themselves as you started to get yourself on a new frequency?
Yeah, man, it's interesting you brought that up, man. I just had one of my brothers who I was in a circle with in when I first started college. He was over here the other night, and just catching up with him. But I had to leave because I wasn't my mindset wasn't accepting. You know, it was like, how many girls have you slept with? All right, we need to run that up. We need to multiply that by three. And it was like, when I first got in there, I was very naive, and I was like, okay, maybe. But again, in my spirit, every time I had sex with someone who I didn't care about, or I mean, I didn't love, I would say, I didn't love or have a close relationship with, I felt the emptiness still there. And so when I'm going to my boys, like, yo, I'm not really feeling this, and they calling me a simp, or they saying you need to do this more, you need to do that more. It got to the point where I was like, all right, I got love for y'all, but I gotta go because I can't go against myself, and I can't sit up here and take verbal abuse for me going in the direction that feels right for me. And so I still have love for every single one of them, and we still connect at times. But I definitely had to leave because they were just following the mold that generations of men have been taught. And it was similar in my family, like a lot of men coming up like, yo, what girl you dealing with? How many bodies you have? Why you not doing that? When I was your age, I was doing this, this, and that. And it's just like, it's all in vain. It doesn't really, nothing comes from it. So yeah, I had to leave, isolate myself.
No, that's real, and that's a part of the journey. And you talked about kind of the two sides of the coin, where you within yourself start to change, and your spirit is telling you like, okay, this situation, this friendship doesn't serve you. However, you also know the other side of the coin, where you can still give that friendship grace. You can still love someone from afar and just know like, all right, that's where they're currently at.
Right.
We all change. We all are on our own kind of journey and pace with things. So it doesn't mean that there won't be some day where they maybe they could just like you, like, man, I used to be this way. Now I found that engaging in these relationships, it is a void. It's not really healthy. I want to kind of get to where you're at, and can you help me learn or help me in my growth there? So I appreciate you kind of like sharing that story, but then also just kind of talking about the grace that you still give to your friends, because we live in a kind of a unique culture where sometimes people will just kind of cut someone off, but you can still do it with grace and still love.
Yeah, sure.
And a point you made earlier too, Naeem, that I want to talk about is like, as it comes to that root work, for many of us men, the struggle is around relationships and sex. And you use that example that you shared of like thinking at the end of the day, it was a failure. The date, the night, whatever, was a failure. And it brings up this whole point that many of us men might go on, where removing sex becomes a part of our journey and root work of trying to course correct or just get ourselves onto a kind of a healthier path. And so I wonder, just like, what are your thoughts on male celibacy, males going on that journey? Do you think that could be a powerful tool for men who are either trying to heal or trying to do root work?
Most definitely. Because you're on top of avoiding a distraction, you're removing a way that over time, sex we've used as men to gratify ourselves. And so it's like money, right? Like if I have to build my self-esteem without money, it'll be a more secure foundation than if I built it, if my self-esteem went through the roof because I won $1 million. Once that money is gone, I'll be back to ground zero. But if I put myself at ground zero and say, all right, these are my insecurities, these are my triggers, these are my doubts, let me work on it. By the time I get the woman or a woman that I feel is worth me laying with or marrying, ideally marrying, and then laying with, it's like I'll know that I'm not more of a man because of this, and I'm not less of a man because I didn't choose this route. And so I think it's extremely important. And I think also it's a very spiritual journey. I think that we were never taught the value of our seed and retaining that. I think, we've all felt the effects of that, releasing it too often or prematurely, and the sluggishness, the clouded vision, the clouded, mindsets. And it's like when we say we're gonna cut this out and we're gonna just lock in and we're gonna focus, a lot of beautiful things come from that. That's how the men's group started, man. I was in my season. Like I was not dealing with anybody. I wasn't going on any dates. And I had taken a semester off from school. Um, yeah, my grandma had just passed, and so it was like there was a lot of like, all right, I'm gonna just lock in, I'm gonna just focus. And me and Elder Wayne got together, we built the space, and it's been growing ever since. But I think for us as guys, we waste so much time chasing that if we just took some of that time off and focus, we would see a lot of beautiful results come from it.
Yeah. Now you dropping some gems right here, and I want to kind of hold this for a minute because what you're sharing about the importance of men understanding the power of retaining themselves and what could be done. Not only the power of retaining them, the power too of foundation setting. Because many of us, we do build our foundation off of ego, off of, we talked about it, like pleasures, pains, like all of this exterior stuff that, like you said, when any of that's impacted, we crumble. But if we build our foundation off of the right things, the healthy things, we're solid no matter what life throws at us. And listen, I completely 100% agree with you on the power of celibacy, of semen retention, because you're right, that clarity that you get, because you built up this inner equity in yourself, certain triggers and things of that nature don't you're not as impulsive. And myself, I went through a season of that, I think like a 1 year season of that. And it was just like the ways that you can then pivot your attention and that creative energy towards some other things for any men that go on it, whatever their thoughts are, a 1 month, a 1 week, whatever, start where you're at. To Naeem's point, you will reap some benefits that can really change your life and your trajectory going forward.
Yeah, and I want to quote one of my brothers, Ayub Love. He comes to the men's group a lot. He told us, he shared with us, the same energy you use to have sex, the creative energy, is the same one that you could channel to create, the gifts that God's given you, if it's music, if it's artwork, if it's drawing, if it's painting, if whatever it is, you can channel that. I think that's why sometimes like guys, I know that it's like when the urges come, they'll go hit some push-ups, like oh, hit 10, hit 15, work out. It's just it can be channeled. And like you said, when it is channeled, beautiful things happen. And yeah, it builds a stronger foundation for our relationships in the future.
And once again, now how old are you again, bro?
Uh, I'm 22.
Look, yo, 22-year-old king right here. I know when I was 22, I was not on your frequency, so the things that you were doing, this is why I find you inspirational. I appreciate having to be in your circle because, and I gotta give you your flowers on this, because what you're doing at 22, most of our men are not doing at 22. And so the impact that you're having now on someone like myself who's 36 and what you've been having on those coming behind you, like God, the universe has got nothing but just great things planned for you here in the present and in the future. So just keep doing what you're doing, because at 22, I wasn't talking about no retention. I wasn't talking about any of this stuff. So this is just, it's refreshing and, like I said, inspiring to hear you talk about and share. So just want to up you on that, King, because that's powerful.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And you're humble too. And don't worry, I'm gonna be your hype man on it when it comes to all this stuff. So I got you. I got you covered. So I want to just kind of going back to just how you and I connected, which was just the power of community.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to share about that? Because once again, men, we're so used to doing things in isolation, thinking we've got to figure this thing out, think we got to figure this video game of life out by ourselves. Like for you, how impactful has it been to lean on community? Like what has it meant to you in your journey?
It's extremely impactful. Like everything that you list about me, I'm not without my family, without my friends, without my peers, my neighbors. Um, I would just say, especially us black men, don't limit yourself. You know, like some of my mentors in different aspects have been elderly white women. Sometimes it's Mexican homies I met at school or Asian teachers. It's like sometimes we think we can only rock with our own and then we end up being limited. There's something that we can learn from other people. And I really credit my ability to do that to my dad. He would teach me that at a young age of like not viewing someone as less than and listening to what they have to say. My mom as well. And growing up in Berkeley, you know, there's all types of people everywhere. And I just had to learn. I learned quickly how to connect with different people. So community is extremely important. And there's something really, really strong about brotherhood. I think at I don't know what age it starts, but somewhere along the line when we got to like 18 or 19 or 20 or maybe even like started at like 16, our focus stopped being our friend groups and maybe we started chasing women or we started chasing money. But it's like if you think back to you as a kid, I think that's a lot of times the blueprint that I bring back to guys is think back to you as a kid. What was your friend group like? I know for me, it was me and my boys. Like we were playing basketball every day at recess, trading basketball cards and stuff like that. But that was my group, that was my community. And I still need that as an adult. And it's the same thing with like our hobbies. Like some of my favorite things to do now as an adult, I like to do as a kid. And so like thinking back to what was I like as a kid and what brought me joy? Was it playing with my guy cousins playing flag football or was it playing with my boys playing basketball? Was it riding bikes in the hills? Like what was it? And circling back because that'll feed your soul. You know, I feel like the soul doesn't age, our body does. So there's certain things that your soul craved as a kid that it got that we took away from ourselves as adults. And that's why a lot of times adulthood be feeling so miserable because we're not giving our soul what it really needs.
Yeah, yeah, you're dropping gems here, and just to highlight this point you make about the importance of community. We none of us got to go through this journey alone, and there's iron sharpens iron, and so it's vital for people to men. To your point, for men especially to kind of realize that and to tap back into that, and to just know that you can be vulnerable. Like we need to be more vulnerable with each other because the struggles that we encounter are real. But as you noted, if we are healthier versions of ourselves and we're doing that collectively, that really spreads across the community, whether it be with our partners, children, and beyond. It allows us to have more of a positive impact. So before we get into the each one teach one, before we wrap up and get into that, one thing I want to go back and talk about is grace, specifically self-forgiveness. And there's a Bible verse, Naeem, that I've heard you share that I want to reference and really just kind of get your thoughts on it. So it's the Bible verse, Psalms 130. I believe this is what you shared in one of the meetings, but I'm just going to read it real quick. So it's about self-forgiveness. Praise the Lord, O my soul, all my inmost being. Praise his holy name, who satisfies your desires with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works righteousness and justice for all opposed. The Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love. So can you share more about what this, not only this verse means to you, but how someone who is maybe dealing with shame, guilt, regret for whether it's their past actions to someone else or their past actions to themselves, how they can maybe take a verse like this and apply this to their life if they're struggling with their own pain or maybe harm that they've caused?
Yeah, you said that was Psalms 130.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, because I know exactly what you're talking about. The group that we read that at, and there was something I wanted to continue with that because it really helps me. Mm, okay, I don't think that's the one, but
Damn, I tried though. You know
yeah,
what verse I'm talking about though. You know what verse I'm
you
talking
tried,
about, right?
but
All right,
there's
yeah, you know what verse I'm talking about. Correct me though. Save me on that one.
You want me to get the one that you were talking about?
Yeah. If you could read the verse that you referenced that was about self-forgiveness, and yeah, just share what you would offer to someone out there who is just, because of their shame and their guilt and their regret about their past, is struggling with forgiving themselves for either the harm that they've caused to themselves or the harm that they've caused to another.
Yeah. Um. So one thing that I would say is that God forgives you, and truly understanding that really sometimes that could take time. But the verse that we were talking about that night is Psalms 103, and there's a line in there that says He takes into consideration that we're mere dust. And what that means is, in Genesis they talk about how we are made from the dirt, but it also, if you or I were to pass right now and you were to bury us, we would decompose and turn back into dirt. So everything is one. So I would just encourage you that the Bible also says you can find out about the glory of God through looking at nature. If you look at nature, nothing is wasted. So even with the struggles that you're going through right now, none of that will be wasted. Because if I struggled with porn and I beat it, then that's not wasted. The time that I struggled is not wasted, because then when my brother comes and he says, I'm struggling with this, I now have experience in that. If I struggled with alcohol and it was 10 years and I run into a brother who's in his seventh year of struggling, I can encourage him about the light at the end of the tunnel when I struggled and I didn't understand that it would come to an end. And so my thing is that a lot of times the beautiful thing about accepting God's grace is that it helps you to forgive yourself, and then it also helps you to forgive other people. Because once you forgive yourself, I would say that's probably easier than forgiving other people. So it's like once you forgive yourself, you can then say, okay, when my brother messes up, okay, not only did God forgive me when I messed up, but I had to forgive myself. Let me extend that same amount of grace to the person who needs it. So for me, when I think about grace and acceptance, it's like just knowing that, you're forgiven, you're good, and really holding on to that. Like, what does that mean? I'm solid. Like, one thing I really like to do is I like to watch people who've had near death experiences talk about the experiences when they felt they came face to face with their creator, with God, Yahweh. And they would say, like, just the feeling of there's nothing I need to do to prove that I'm loved was present. And so just hold on to that. There's nothing you need to do to prove that you're worthy of love. You're already loved. And so forgive yourself, speak kindly to yourself, comfort that inner child in you. Like, I like to imagine, like, Marshall, one of our brothers, he told us he would hug himself, and he did it in front of group. And that was pretty vulnerable of him. And it was also pretty funny because he was laughing about it, just how awkward it felt. But really love yourself, like really accept yourself. It becomes easier when you accept yourself. Although I make these mistakes, I was never designed to be perfect. God doesn't get the most glory out of robots who worship him because they were designed to. God gets the most glory out of imperfect beings like ourselves trying to walk this walk that is super difficult, that we're not able to do without help. And so just accept that. Acknowledge when you make a wrong, but don't allow it to stop you from trying again to do better. That's what I would say.
Dropping gems. Dropping gems, man. You be out in your years, Naeem. Man, just uplifting here and just empowering folks to just know it's okay. We all make mistakes. We all have a past, but as you awaken and you just continue to work on yourself and love yourself, like you said, nothing gets wasted. You can use that experience. And for many of us, we're trying to use it in some of these ways, whether it's like men's group and what's being shared, having conversations like this. And it just benefits, and we're able to kind of pass it forward to those around us and coming behind us. So love what you shared there. So Naeem, we're gonna get into our each one teach one section. So this is our 4 rapid fire questions for you. So you ready for the first one?
Yeah, I'm ready, man.
All right. So the first one is, what's one book that has been impactful for you in your healing journey?
Oh yeah, I got leadership pains.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about this one. This definitely is a new one here.
Samuel R. Chad. It just talks about the pain of leadership and the pain of growth in general. Because you growing is you becoming who you're meant to be, and they're growing pains. It's like the caterpillar going into the cocoon. He has to break out afterwards. And from the outside, from the inside looking out, it looks like he died because everything's dark in there and he's alone, solitude. And yeah, it's like, but when he comes out, he's beautiful. And his purpose is even more lived out in him being able to fly. And so it's like just breaking down some of the pains and hardships that come with you following the journey that you were always designed to walk in, and know that, it's not going to be easy. Um, it's spiritually rooted. It's a spiritual battle out here. And you got to know, that with the goals that you have in mind, you're not supposed to achieve them easily. Like, you got to know that. And that's what the book like reiterates. Like, you're sent here for a specific purpose. You're going to get it done, but there's a reason why it hasn't gotten done, but you're here so that it will get done. So get it done. That's a lot of get it done right there. But
Hey, that's real. That's real game. No, I appreciate you sharing that one. I'll be sure to put that one in the show notes, Naeem.
Oh yeah.
So the next question for you is, what's one habit or practice that has been a game changer for you in your lifestyle design?
Working out in the morning. Yeah, man. That's a life changer. Cause it gets you to bed late. I mean, it gets you to bed early, and surprisingly, you have more energy throughout the day. And so that's changed a lot, and it's built a lot of discipline, self control.
I love it. I know it's Sunday today, so hey, see you at the office tomorrow. Word, love it. So the next one is, what's one law or policy that you would make that everyone would need to abide by?
Give grace. That's it. Give grace, because there would be no cancel culture with grace, because we would give you the grace to evolve. And then also, we just gotta stop judging everybody, because none of us are perfect. Like, well, there needs to be standards for sure, and but I would say give more grace. That would be my law.
I love that one, and I want to also highlight something that you shared a little bit earlier that sticks out to me is, many of us can kind of create this bubble where, because of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, we put blinders on and we're not willing to be as open to insight from others. And you kind of talked a little bit about that. And so I think that also is just something I want to make sure I didn't forget to mention. I think that was really important, that we all can learn from each other. And maybe that's even more important reason why we need to give each other more understanding and openness and grace.
Most definitely. Most definitely, man. Most definitely. I'm learning that now. I'm still learning it, but it's definitely important, because again, we all got something special to give. So just don't close anybody out, because they might be key to the next blessing.
That's right. And so the last rapid fire question for you, Naeem, that I'm asking all the guests this season is, what is one lesson about love that you needed to learn in order to become who you are today?
Love hurts. And love requires a lot of selflessness. Yeah, love's patient, it's consistent, it's kind, it's generous. And you know that scripture where it breaks down what love is. And it was like one thing that really stood out to me. It says love doesn't take into account wrongs. And man, loving people where they're at, loving people with what they're going through, you really have to not take into account some of the things they say when they're mad or they're hurt. And it's hard. That's why it's easier to cancel someone than it is to actually stick by their side while they're struggling, and stay in that fire with them. But it's worth it at the end of the day, because by you doing that, it is kind of like each one teach one. Someone could think back about how you would love them when they were at a low spot. So when they're dealing with someone who they love who's at a low spot, they'll have a little bit more of a blueprint to follow because someone was there for them when they weren't at their best. And so if we can show that love to one another, I feel like we'll be able to have a more complete view of what love is, which will better our world altogether.
Oh, that's a beautiful verse. It's like love is patient, love is kind, doesn't dishonor, keeps no record of wrong, doesn't delight in evil. Love always protects, trusts, and hopes. Love never fails. Yeah. It's a deep one right there. It's a deep one. So Naeem, you've shared so many just gems, and I know folks are going to be wondering like, what's next for you, but also where can people go to learn more and just find out about you and just tap into your genius?
So we got the men's group's Instagram account, which is one word, the men's group 33 on Instagram. My personal account is spelled N.SIEF. And everything on there you can find from artwork, music, photography, films. And I love to promote my brothers on there, so you'll be figuring out more about them as well. Podcast, as well as, film. Keontae's in film, got brothers who do photography, brothers who do music, and I myself dabble in all of that. So it's like, if you want to find out more about the community that we're working with, follow that account, as well as make sure you follow the men's group account. We post the topics and the scriptures that we have weekly, and we got some more important things coming for our community. So those two accounts, you can find a lot of information.
Love it. I'm gonna make sure it all gets added. And Naeem, again, I'm gonna give you the flowers and all the props you deserve, because you're role modeling so many different things here, whether it be the importance of vulnerability, community, grace, and then just kind of how you're taking what you learned through your journey and giving back to others and uplifting others and empowering others and helping heal others. Like, that's what it's all about. Like, that's truly being a king. You're taking care of the kingdom around you, and that's just going to trickle down. So I feel blessed to be in your circle and part of your universe, and just like I said, everything that I'm getting to learn from you and all the insight and just taking the journey too with today's conversation, being so open and vulnerable, all the topics we discussed. Just much love and appreciation to you, brother.
I appreciate you, my brother. Thank you. And yeah, it's encouraging to watch you drop your podcast, man. You've been super consistent, and I'm looking forward to having you on mine when we get it going.
For sure. You already know. Looking forward to that. So,
Yes,
well, folks, that is it for today's show. I'd like to thank you all again for your presence and tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share the Living Once Twice podcast on LinkedIn, Instagram, or wherever, leaving us a review on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. And give us a follow on Instagram at Living Once Twice, reaching out to you all through the time and the space that separates us to say, remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Catch you later on Living Once Twice.